Be open to those divine moments and those miracles because they're all around us. And as entrepreneurs and leaders, we have schedules that are often so full, we're rushing from one thing to the next, that we don't take the time to pause and to breathe and to meditate and to pray and to just be quiet. And it's in those moments that we get those messages, and they can show up in unexpected places.
Unresolved trauma doesn't always announce itself with obvious symptoms. Sometimes it hides beneath a successful exterior, quietly shaping your reactions and limiting your potential. Janelle Bruland, my guest on today's show, is an award-winning entrepreneur, executive leadership coach, and author of 2 transformative books, The Success Lie and Your Way Back to Happy. She built a janitorial startup from her living room into a multi-state operation with 500 employees, yet discovered through a brain scan years later that she was carrying undiagnosed PTSD from decades of living with unaddressed trauma. In our conversation, we explore how entrepreneurs often dismiss their own trauma as insignificant compared to war veterans or abuse survivors, yet these small t traumas accumulate and manifest as physical illness, reactive behaviors, and invisible barriers to authentic leadership. Janelle shares her healing journey through EMDR, holistic modalities, and spiritual practices that helped her release memories stored in high definition within her brain. We discuss the connection between grief and disease, the power of accepting the present moment as divinely orchestrated, and why slowing down to spend intentional time with loved ones matters more than any business achievement. So without any further ado, on with the show. Janelle, it's so great to have you on the show.
So great to be here, Stephan. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's start with a little bit of superhero origin story, and of course we met through Genius Network, Joe Polish's amazing mastermind and community, and yeah, we've known each other for several years now, maybe a few years. Is that right?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
three years or more.
yeah, awesome. So let's talk about your superhero origin story. How did you end up being the author of 2 books and having, a successful business and all the cool stuff that you've created in the world up to now?
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it just seemed to unfold as we know as everything is supposed to unfold. But I have always had dream of running my own business, being an entrepreneur. Started a number of ventures, and as I was growing business, I felt that I really loved to grow business, but I also really loved to develop people. And I would say that where this really took place was a business that I started out of the living room of my home back when I was pregnant, 9 months pregnant actually, with my second child. And I had been working in the corporate world, just putting in a lot of hours. And I made this decision to do something on my own because I felt that it was going to help me really make my family a first priority, which I wanted that to be. So I started this little side business, this commercial janitorial company. And I didn't know anything about that industry, but I'd heard about it. I thought this is something that I can do for my home. I had a manager that was ready to go for it. So I had this tiny little team. And I remember saying to them in the middle of my living room, I don't know anything about this janitorial business, but I do know something about business. And I believe that if we work together, you teach me what you know, and we're going to take really great care of our clients. They're going to refer us to other clients, and the company will grow. And that's exactly what happened. And we began to have clients ask for additional services. They were saying, can you clean my windows? Can you do my carpets? Can you do landscaping for us? And as I had a property management background and I had a lot of contacts in the area, I began referring people to different colleagues that I knew. And then I thought, you know what, this is something that we could bring and we could actually provide this as a service for our clients. So as our clients had needs, we added services, and it turned into a multi-state operation with 500 team members. And we were just very blessed in the growth of this business. And I had a wonderful team. And going back to, as I found in growing business, I loved growing business, but even more, I loved developing people. And that really led me on this journey to be able to go forward and start really helping people develop themselves. And then that led forward into speaking and becoming an author as well.
Yeah. So you employed 500 people. What happened to that business? Did you sell it? Did you kind of leave it on autopilot and move on to your speaking and writing career? Like what happened there?
Great question. So I was, as most entrepreneurs, very, very driven and felt that I could do it all. A little bit of superwoman with running my business, taking care of my children. And something happened that I was on my way to a conference one day, and I, on the airplane, had this very strange blackout experience where I lost a portion of the flight. And in doing that, well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. Someone was coming down the aisle to take food orders, and I thought, oh, I would like something. I'm hungry, and I was thinking about what I was going to order. The next moment, I looked down, and I had my tray out, and I had a plate of food in front of me. And I didn't remember any of it. I didn't remember the flight attendant stopping at my row. I didn't remember making my food order. Didn't remember the food coming. So that was enough to scare me to go, okay, something's going on here. I need to get this checked out. And I had just had a lot on my plate. And as we often do as entrepreneurs, we kept thinking, well, later I'll take a look at some of these things. Later I'll slow down. After I do this, then I will slow down. There'll be time to take a break. And I went into the doctor's office when I got back from this conference. And he took a brain scan, did all of the things, and came back into his appointment with me and said, Janelle, I want to tell you that you're okay, that we don't need to do anything, any surgery to remove a tumor, which of course was my biggest concern. And he said, but you do need to do something else. He said, you do need surgery, drastic surgery on your schedule, because the life that you're living right now is not sustainable. I know you have this awesome business, you've got a great family, but the pace of which you're living is not sustainable. And I hadn't been taking care of myself. I've been focusing on everything and everyone else except for myself. And so that really led me to do some deep soul searching and really get deep into my values and what was most important for me, and to make a huge shift in my life. So I created a framework, and that is how I began living my life. And then others began noticing this and saying, Janelle, you've always look like you've had your life all together. You have this great business, these wonderful girls. But yet now there's this inner harmony that you didn't seem to have before, and what's changed. And so, and can you tell me how to do it? So out of that, while running my business, I kept being asked to speak and to help others. My husband and also business partner, Graham, decided to start a leadership development company. So we created these leadership groups where we could bring people together, and really in an iron sharpens iron environment, that we could help us live true to our most important values and create this world impact at the same time. And that's really how my first book, The Success Lie, came out, because this was my story. I had bought into this lie of success that you have to keep doing more and more and more, and that was what society was telling us that we needed to do, and not the correct thing. So as this continued to develop, I made the decision to step away from the day-to-day of my business, getting back to your question. And I'm still an owner in that facility services company today, but I'm not involved in the day-to-day operations of it anymore, so that I can focus on this leadership development, our impact entrepreneur group, and then of course writing books, which is something that I'm called to do.
Yeah, awesome. So, did you consider selling the business, or was that not really in the cards?
Oh, good question. I did actually bring in partners into the business so that I could take some chips off the table. So I did do that as a way, because from hopping over to a financial perspective, I had put a lot of chips into one business. And I always think it's good to diversify. And I had spent many years, 25 years in this business and doing other entrepreneurial pursuits as well. But there was a lot there. And when I knew that I didn't want to be involved in the day-to-day operations anymore, I could have remained a complete owner of the business. And yet I felt if I did that, I would still feel like I really needed to be more present all the time in more present in the day-to-day operations. So I brought in a partner in that was able to be get some chips off the table for me so that I could still have ownership in the company, but not be fully responsible for it anymore, which just felt like a great shift for me.
Yeah. How many years ago was that?
Oh, wow. That was let's see, in 2021, I stepped down from being CEO of my company.
Yeah. Interesting time with what happened globally with the
Isn't
pandemic.
it? Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Hmm. So, why janitorial? Why did you start with that? Like, was there just a chance meeting with somebody who happened to be in that field, or just it popped in your mind one day, like, I should learn about janitorial and start a business in that, or what happened there?
No, exactly right. It was a chance encounter. I'd been doing some business consulting for different clients, and I'd met a colleague who was had a number of different business ventures, and he had this small venture as a janitorial company in our area with just a handful of employees, and he was going to be moving out of the area and said, "Hey, Janelle, would you like to take this over? It has a manager and just a really small team." And he said, I think that you could do this. And he knew I'd wanted to be running my own company and doing something while keeping my priority for my family intact. And so that's really how it started. And so he made an introduction and I met the manager, and yeah, one thing led to another. And I was stepping in at 9 months pregnant to go, this is what I'm going to do. And really at that point, we talk about making these strategic plans and where you're going to take your company. I was just really looking for what was the solution that was going to allow me to be more present for my family, and rather than working for somebody else a lot of hours. And things just began to unfold as we did the kind of job that was really taking care of our clients and really caring about what we were doing. And it naturally began to unfold.
So the Success Lie is your first book. What is the Success Lie?
The success lie is really how society tells us what success is versus you and I realizing what success means to us. So the whole basis of the book is that society creates this pressure, or people in our lives create this pressure, this image, and they tell us what to believe. So we're raised believing what success is, but that may be not what our version of success is. And so there's a number of lies about success. One of them that I mentioned as we first started talking about this is that lie that we have to continue to do more and more and more, take on more, never say no. And until we're just at a place of exhaustion, that we think that adding more on is going to bring us this success. And in that book, I talk about a number of lies that we buy into that really takes us from that version of ourselves. So it's instead, there's simple truths to take us to this place from overwhelmed to this place of inner peace. And that's when we find what our true values are. And we begin to actually live by those, and we eliminate everything else that's a distraction to that. So that's really what I take people through in the book. And then I talk about my story of where I found myself in a very challenging situation where my first husband abandoned our family when my children were very young. And I was at work one day, just busy growing my company, and thought that everything was going quite well. And I came home and found my two youngest daughters, age 4 and 7, home alone. And I didn't know how long they had been there. They were in my husband's care that day. And suddenly my world was turned upside down. And I was a single mom with 3 children. And it was a very, very difficult time. And one of the success lies that I talk about is the fact that when we have these challenging situations come, we feel that that just takes our power away and we aren't able to get it back. And a lot of people will stay stuck in that lie that our circumstances define us. And I was able to take steps that I talk about in the book of how we need to, in many ways, get our feet back underneath us. We need to realize that there is a plan, that it's all good for us, and we need to take those steps forward, and it's all going to unfold in a beautiful way. So that's really the purpose of that book. And it was helping leaders really take a good look at their life, at all areas of life. And as I coach and with our impact entrepreneur group, we really focus on that holistic view of the leader. We want your business to be an amazing success, but we want every aspect of your life, your business, your health, your mindset, your faith, family, and legacy, all to be deeply rooted and flourishing. So in the success slide, I talk about the 7 main life areas and how we really need to be putting a focus in all areas, because if we find ourselves really out of balance, if you're focusing completely on your work, but you're ignoring your health, then your health's going to cause challenges for you, and it's going to keep you from being able to create the impact in your work and your family, your finances, and all of these different areas. So that's really the basis of the first book.
So one thing that pops into my mind as you discuss this is I interviewed David Guillaume, who is a Kabbalah teacher and motivational speaker. Really brilliant guy and a very successful businessman. But he shared a framework or a analogy that was really powerful. And I don't know if it's from him or if he learned it from somewhere else, but the idea is simple, that when you chase the white light, okay, imagine a prism. So the white light goes into the prism and then out come all the different colors. If you chase after the white light, all the colors are included. But if you chase after an individual color, such as your health, such as wealth or your business or a relationship, then the other colors get neglected and they kind of fall to pieces. So chase after the white light. That's going to give you everything in life. And the white light, of course, is the light of the creator, your divine connection to the all that is. And I find that to be very true and very helpful way to operate life.
I agree. I think that's where it all starts. We have to have that connection with God. We have to understand that He created us. He created us for this beautiful purpose. And our job is to understand and move toward that. And it unfolds as life unfolds. And being willing to just be open and surrendered to that is a really great place to start.
Yeah. Yeah. And one thing you said earlier, like a few minutes ago, was that there's a plan and that it's for the good, or this is for your benefit, something along those lines. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I'm curious to have you kind of unpack that in the example of your now ex-husband, when you showed up at home with the 4 and 7-year-old not attended to, home alone. I'm sure at the time it was hard to see the blessing in that, to see that there's a plan and that this is for the good. But now looking back, how do you see that in that kind of light of what you just described of the plan and the good?
Thanks for the question. And I look back at it now and I see it as a gift in my life, and there was a purpose to it. And in writing that first book where I told that story for the first time, and going back a little bit, I was a busy entrepreneur. I had a full plate that I loved. I loved working with my clients. I loved my community. I was serving on some different boards. And of course, my family was number one priority for me. But I kept getting this nudge that I was supposed to write a book, that I was supposed to tell this story. And I didn't want to do that at first, but there just continued to be these confirmations. This one time I was at a meeting and I had just done an opening for somebody else at a conference. And somebody came up to me and said, "I'm supposed to tell you that you need to write that book." and that this is what you need to be doing. I said, what do you mean I need to be doing? You need to be getting up and talking to people about your life and the decisions that you've made and how they've brought you to where you are today. And so, like, okay, God, I'll write the book. And I ended up putting disciplined time aside to actually make it happen, because they just don't come on their own. You have to really make the discipline once you've been called to do anything in your life. There's all kinds of distractions, as you know, that we get that pull us from that greater purpose. And my purpose was to tell this story and to have people read about that, and then be able to reach out and just see the framework that I put together and say that they're taking action, that I had seen them where they didn't feel seen before. And they felt, if I could do it, if I could take back my life and take back my power, then they could do it too. Women and men who had been through challenging circumstances in their life. And so that was powerful and humbling. And I wouldn't have had the book if I didn't have that circumstance happen in my life, and how it grew me and changed me, right? They say, I have a chapter in the book, Bitter or Better. You can allow the difficult circumstances in your life to make you bitter or to make you better. And the book was going to be titled, and my publisher changed it, It's Your Choice. That was the title of the manuscript when I turned it in, because it really is, at the end of the day, it's your choice on how you're going to live your life, how you're going to show up. If you're going to show up in love, with love and gratitude and forgiveness for those hard situations, or whether you're going to be bitter and allow it to just take you to this place that's an unhealthy place to live, frankly.
So I imagine in order to be bitter about it, you have to feel like a victim or unjustly treated or somehow disenfranchised. Whereas if you realize or recognize that you had entered into a soul contract before you were born to have this very struggle, challenge, and opportunity, then it'd be hard to feel bitter about it, right? Because it's like, hey, I signed up for this. Why would I be griping about it now?
Mm, that's so true.
Do you feel like you signed up for this?
That's an interesting question. I believe fully that God knows the entire plan of our life and every ebb and flow all the way through our lives. And I also believe that we have free will along the way, and free will to make choices that may or may not be in our best interest. And even if we make choices that take us down a path that's difficult, our God is faithful and can make blessings out of it, anything that happens. So yes, I do believe that this was always going to be, it was going to be as it was going to be. And I really learned more of that as I wrote my second book. These last few years have been life altering, and really learning about what being present means. And Eckhart Tolle says, and I won't get this perfectly, but he says that we need to accept the present moment as it is, as if we had chosen it. So even in those really hard circumstances of our life, and I had a health issue earlier this year, that I had changed so much, and just accepting what's happening in my life, that I could accept and just know that what's happening right now is for my good. And what's happening, there's a bigger purpose in it. When I was in my 20s and having this situation, 20s, early 30s, when I had this situation happen with my girls, I wasn't there yet. It was more of I believed, I had a deep faith. I believed that God was going to take me through the situation. But in going through it, as you can imagine, I didn't think that it was for my good then. Looking back, I do now. And now I feel like I'm living my life more in that concept of this present moment. This is what we have right here, right now. And it is such a gift. And this is where we need to focus and not be so focused on those outcomes. And that really led me to go deeper into one of the lies of the success lie. One of the lies that I wrote about in the success lie, and there were 5, was that you can't get beyond the pain of your past, that you're going to be that victim, as you talked about, because so many people fall there and they never get out of it. And I thought, I need to go deeper on this. And I didn't even know what the reason was for that then. And I had my own learnings through the journey of writing the second book, going deeper into the pain, unresolved pain of the past. And I really learned about trauma and its effect on the brain and body. And so my second book that came out in June of 25, Your Way Back to Happy, is how to turn the pain of your past into a future of freedom, purpose, and peace. And it was my journey on how I did that, and hope in hopes to help others who were leading from a place of unresolved trauma. And trauma can make us really good leaders. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have been through really difficult challenges in their life, and it makes them a better leader. And it can also show up in ways that are not helpful. So when you can resolve that past trauma, it can help you become a more authentic, better leader. So kind of came full circle in the next book.
Yeah, yeah, we'll talk about that more. I'm curious before we do if you see that there's a connection between trauma and disease. I'm guessing the answer is yes. Disease and pain, chronic pain in particular, because like in the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Are you familiar with that book, by the way?
Yes, very familiar. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if our body keeps the score as far as the traumas and so forth, and it's held in our body, if we don't make peace with the trauma and maybe turn that trauma into blessing or reveal the blessing in it, then it's going to be trapped in our body and kind of fester until push comes to shove, until we're forced to deal with it. And at least that's my understanding of it. And I'm curious to hear what your take is on that and how that ties into your second book.
Yes, I agree with that completely, Stephan. That is exactly right, that our trauma is stored in our body. And if we don't understand that and recognize that, then it gets trapped there. And our job is to learn how to release that and let that go. And the second book really came out of, I was looking at with my husband, Graham, and we decided that, hey, for our 50th birthday, let's get some health scans. Let's just make sure that we're taking the best care of ourselves that we can. And so we decided to do a brain scan. We had some friends of ours who had done this through the Amen Clinic. It's called a SPECT scan.
Yep,
and they felt that
it really, I've actually had Dr. Really... Amen on the show.
Oh, you have? Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he did a SPECT scan on both Graham and I, and we really just wanted to learn about our health and get a baseline. Maybe you check every other organ in your body. So when I read his book, Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, I went, wow, that makes so much sense, because he talked about how we go to doctors for every other organ in our body, but we don't get our brain checked. Instead, if we're feeling sad or we have something going on in our life, we go to a psychiatrist and they don't do a brain scan. They just prescribe something, guessing what it is. And how he'd helped so many people, including his nephew, realize things going on in the brain that they didn't even know and were being misdiagnosed. So we just got this to be able to help ourselves. Our couple friend who had done it had said it also helped them improve their communication when they did it as husband and wife, because they realized how differently their brains were wired. Well, when we got the results for those scans, the doctor asked if we wanted to go in together or separately. We sit together, and Graham had done his first, and then he said, okay, let's do yours, Janelle. And he asked me if I knew what PTSD was. And I said, well, yes, I do post-traumatic stress disorder. And that happens if somebody's been through really difficult trauma in their life, if there's been maybe abuse in the home or maybe a war veteran. And he said, I want to show you a picture of a quote unquote normal brain scan. And he put it down on the table, and it showed the brain calm and dark. And then he showed a scan where he said, this is the amygdala in the brain, and it's your fear response of the brain, your fight or flight response. And he said, the amygdala should be calm and quiet like this one. But he said, but you'll see on this scan, which is a classic PTSD scan, that this amygdala is lit up like New York Times Square. And he said, that's because it's on all the time with this alarm because of trauma that has gone on. Maybe it's been one event, maybe it's been several events over years, but it's created this always on alarm, which makes you think that you're always having to escape from something. And so I said, oh, that's interesting. Then he laid a scan down next to that one, and he said, and this is your scan. And it was identical to the scan of the classic PTSD brain. And he said, Janelle, you show these very same symptoms in your brain. You've obviously been through what I would guess years of chronic trauma in your life. And wow, this was just like a mic drop moment. I had no idea. I felt fine. I had gotten my life back together as far as I thought. I was living a great life. I was happy. I was satisfied, feeling fulfilled. But buried deep inside was this unresolved trauma. And it was a, wow, this is interesting. Wow. And then as I began to go deeper, of course, curious, and now what, and figure it out, I went down the path of, well, why is this there? And I realized that I had, from that event years and years ago, that I'd been living with an addict. I was married to him for 20 years and had these children with him. And I was living on this roller coaster that I felt was normal, but it wasn't. It wasn't a healthy situation. And so that was my story of really going, okay, I'd like to figure this out. I'd like to heal this. And I believed that I could. And that's my healing journey is what is the basis of this next book.
Right. And you mentioned earlier in this conversation that you had been out for some medical issues earlier this year. Is that related to the trauma that you were working on healing?
No, that came after. I do think that any type of health issue that we have can not necessarily, but can be related to trauma in our life. So it wasn't part of this book, and this PTSD that came because of years of being in an unhealthy living environment and really doing what I needed to do to protect myself at that time. So this new health issue that came up recently, I believe partly was just entered my life for me to get some new information on maybe where my next chapter lies and in my future. But I also think it has to do with grief, because I recently lost my father, who was very, very precious to me. And having that is a deep wound for sure, that I believe partially was responsible for the recent health issue that I had. And I have a new mind in looking at health at this point and realizing that we have to continue to take care of any trauma that enters our bodies and releasing it to make sure that it doesn't turn into these health conditions. So certainly interesting.
Yeah. So I'm sorry for your loss.
Oh, thank you.
How are you doing now from that? Is that still pretty recent?
It's been a couple of years ago now, but I will miss him until I see him again. And it's never easy to lose a parent who you love deeply. That's for sure. And but I have no regrets in my life with him. And something that I teach about is how, when we talk about what's our values and what's most important, is really making those life decisions that may be completely counter to what society tells us to do. And we did that with my parents. It was after 2020 and all of that happened, and like I had told you, I had made the decision to step away from my business, doing that on a full-time basis. I stepped out of the CEO position and was really excited and building our leadership development business, and I was writing and teaching, and felt that it was time to actually take a sabbatical and spend more time with my parents. My dad had been having some health issues, nothing real serious, but they hadn't been able to really do a lot of travel. And I just felt in my heart that we were supposed to take a break, to pause what we were doing and spend more time with my parents and those precious moments. And it came out of everything can be our teacher. And it came out of me actually having a friend of mine, her mother had passed away, and we were at the service. And she put her hand on my arm and said to me, Janelle, spend every moment that you can with your parents, every precious moment, with tears in her eyes. And it struck me so much. And driving home with Graham afterwards, it just kept sticking with me. And I told him about this, and I said, well, we spend a lot of time with my parents. I mean, they live 30 minutes away, and they come for dinner as a family every Sunday. We see them quite a bit. But it kept resonating with me. And I said to Graham, how would you feel about us spending more dedicated time with my parents and actually traveling with them, taking them to some of the places they've always wanted to go? And bless his heart, with his in-laws, he's like, I'm in, let's do that. And so we met with my parents in the next month, and we sat down in their apartment, and I said, Dad, do you have anything you haven't done, places you haven't traveled, something that you've wanted to do that you haven't done? And he said, I've always wanted to do a cruise around Mexico. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah, Mom and I were looking at booking it several years ago, and we just never did it. I said, well, how about we do that together? And he looked at me with this big smile on his face, and he said, really? I said, yes, I'll take care of all of it. And so that was the first thing that we did. And I signed us up for this cruise, and it was just Graham and I and my mom and dad. And it was the most beautiful, beautiful time together. Just amazing. And we had to slow down to be at their pace. They were in their 80s at that time. But it was just so much fun. We played cards in the evening, and we spent time touring around, and we got to know them as people. And it just really improved our relationship. And then we continued to do that. We took several trips with them before my dad passed away very suddenly. He was very healthy, and then got diagnosed with cancer and died within 10 months. And I look back at that time and that decision, and what a beautiful thing. And I want to tell everyone, just take time away from your job and be with your family in ways that will change you.
When you're describing that moment at the service where your friend grabs you by the arm and tells you that message, that reminds me of Garen Jones, who's also a Genius Network member.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I interviewed him on the show, and he shared this pivotal moment in his life where it was a homeless person who knocked on his window of his car. And Garen was homeless at the time, living and sleeping in his car. And the homeless man wanted money, and Garen yells at him to get away, and, just like, I'm homeless too. What are you doing? And the guy walking off yells at him, change your mindset, change your life. And then just disappeared, right? And of course now he has a book called Change Your Mindset, Change Your Life. And he's a multimillionaire, and he's got an amazing family and incredible life path, trajectory of amazing stuff. And just, it's amazing. Well, that moment was a message, that moment with the homeless person. And so you had that moment with your friend at the funeral or the service. And it feels to me like that was a divine setup. Like those exact words and that exact moment was preordained. Do you feel that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, I do. And it encouraged me to go deeper. And I think for everyone listening, be open to those divine moments and those miracles because they're all around us. And as entrepreneurs and leaders, we have schedules that are often so full, we're rushing from one thing to the next, that we don't take the time to pause and to breathe and to meditate and to pray and to just be quiet. And it's in those moments that we get those messages, and they can show up in completely unexpected places. I was there to support my friend Cindy at her mom's funeral service and just to support her. And she ended up giving me a message that I believe was divine, that had me look deeper. I thought my dad, I mean, we were still playing golf together. And I mean, he was so healthy and took such great care of himself. I never dreamed that those were going to be the last few years of his life. I never dreamed that. And we were spending time with them. We saw them on a regular basis, but it was different. It was going deeper into that relationship. And how can we make this relationship even better, even more special? And how can we give back to these beautiful parents, these people that have raised me and done everything for me? What can we do for them now in just this whole act of giving, when they didn't feel comfortable traveling on their own anymore, and we could do that with them. So it just became, they were blessed by it, we were blessed by it. So, but we miss those moments so often in our lives.
Yeah. So do you feel like do you feel your father's presence? Do you feel like he's with you or supporting you, cheering you on, rooting for
Oh,
you?
oh, definitely. There was an interesting story that comes to mind that I haven't shared, that I guess I'm supposed to share here, so I will. There was a time a few months after his passing that I was I was just upset because I wasn't feeling him, and I missed him and so much. And I remember saying to God that, where is he? And having doubts about all of it, right? When you lose somebody, and just say, is there life after this? Are you okay? God, can you show me something that he's okay? And I went to bed that night, and I got up the next morning, and I looked out, and I have a flower garden outside my window. And I saw this red, and I thought, what is that? And I kind of ignored it. I went and got my coffee, and I came back and I looked again. And in my garden, there was a red rose bush in full bloom. I have roses in that garden. I don't have a red rose in that garden. And I knew then, I'm getting goosebumps as I'm talking about it again now, that that was a sign to me that everything was okay, that he was okay, and that that was God showing me in a miraculous way that I couldn't recreate, that miracles are there and they're all around us, and that everything was okay. And I just felt, red rose and that symbol of love. And I just felt this deep love from my heavenly father, from my father. And it was just such an encouragement to me.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. That reminds me of a beautiful video that went viral of this elderly lady I think it was her mother who had passed, and maybe there was a sister or somebody else in the video, but they were together, and there was this cardinal that actually flew up to them and then landed on the daughter, and they knew that that was their mother, or that was a sign from their mother. And after it just sat on them for a while, it's like, okay, you can fly off now. And then, she moved her arm to get it to fly off, and then it flew right back on her again.
Oh, wow.
So it's clearly non-native behavior of a bird to do that for a
Hmm.
wild bird. And there are many stories of people who have these encounters with animals that act unusually as a message. So it's like they get temporarily taken over by the soul of the loved one to say, hey, this is a message for you.
I'm here.
Yeah, yeah.
That's great.
I'll
That's
dig up that
awesome.
video and I'll include it in the show notes for this episode. It's really
Oh,
really
I
heartwarming.
love that. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, and I would say to your listeners, just going back to the book, Your Way Back to Happy, is sometimes when I talk to people about unresolved trauma, which is really what the book is about, I've had leaders say to me, well, I haven't had any trauma. And I think that people like I did thought that trauma had to be this really awful thing, like these years of childhood abuse or a war veteran. But trauma is simply this: it's a situation where you feel out of control, where you feel that you don't have control. And it's this helpless feeling. And that can happen if you've been in a car accident, or if, obviously losing a loved one, not having control over that, or being through a divorce, or being through a really challenging thing in your business, maybe with a business partner or something like that. All of that is trauma. And we stack that over and over when we don't realize that capability. That's what I did. And the typical entrepreneur who thinks, I'm okay, and pain, what pain? And we push it aside because we have other things we need to do. And we're strong. We've been told by others in our life, if you're a leader, if you're a business owner, you're seen as a strong person. And so then that doesn't ever allow you to get in touch with those emotions and those challenges that maybe you've never dealt with. So I would encourage those listening that take time to take a look within yourself and ask yourself this question: is it possible? Is it just possible that there is something from your past that's holding you back from this best future? Is there something that's happened, something that you may not even realize, like I didn't, that is keeping you from this amazing, freeing, authentic self? I have been transformed into a new, more authentic version of myself, living in freedom and peace like I've never had before when I finally let those chains go of unresolved trauma. And so many of us just, we want to ignore that that's really there. And I think all of us have something that we can break free from.
Yeah. And it's important our listener understands that there's the capital T trauma, but there's also that small t trauma that we tend to just overlook or dismiss, minimize, and that's what can eat at us without us even consciously realizing it.
Right. No question. And so in Your Way Back to Happy, I talk about the conventional approaches that often don't work. Of course, when I was told I had PTSD, the first thing that they wanted to do is put me on meds. And and prescribe me a prescription to make me feel better. And I didn't want to do that. And when I started going down the journey, I was having a really hard time finding ways that were healthy and ways that were holistic to heal trauma. And so I provide a number of modalities, things that I've tried in the book and others that I've seen has success in other people's lives. So it can be a journey where when you're trying to go through anything that mentally, physically is holding you back, it can get really frustrating going through the system to try to figure it out. But I want everybody to know that there is hope and there is healing, and it is absolutely possible to get your life back, to get your confidence and your peace back if you feel like that's gone missing for you.
Yeah. And what was the modality that made the biggest difference for you? Was it EMDR? Was it like psilocybin or some sort of ketamine or some substance? What got you the majority of
I
the way there?
I did a number of different modalities together. I would say one of the things that was most helpful was EMDR
Hmm.
because I had the memories that were there. Um, Dr. Don Wood, who is a friend now, an incredible trauma doctor in Orlando, and he's actually a member of our Impact Entrepreneur Group. And he says that we often will find ourselves thinking that there is something wrong with us. And there's nothing wrong with you. He just says there's just a glitch in your brain where you are seeing a scene from your past in high definition still. And so when something happens today that you maybe have this big reaction to, but you're having the same kind of reaction that you had in this scene from the past because your subconscious doesn't recognize present from past. And so it thinks the past is still happening if you're still hooked into that moment. So his tip program is excellent, and I've already had been through my healing journey before I saw him, but he's helped so many people overcome their trauma. His process is somewhat like EMDR, but different too. And EMDR, you're remembering a particular situation which is in that high definition, and you're going through it in a way where the practitioner is helping you release that and let that go. So by the time that you're done processing that memory, where maybe it was an 8, 9, or 10 in its reaction for you, it becomes a 2. And
Yeah, it kind of
so that
scrambles the signal.
it does. And it's huge. It just unlocks that piece of your brain. So then, I mean, for me, obviously, coming home that day to find my girls home alone and my first husband gone, that was a traumatic event. And that was in high definition for years. And I didn't even realize it. And so going back and actually facing that event with a trusted practitioner, super important, someone you can trust, then they take you through that. And I was able to take that down to a place where I can look at that situation. And certainly that was a sad situation, was a hard time of my life, but I don't have that reaction anymore. It's just a part of my life. It's part of that beautiful fabric of my life.
Yeah. Now, earlier you mentioned free will and that you have choices to make mistakes and go off the path that God wants you to take. Um, do you think that there are multiple timelines, multiple versions of reality where you maybe made some different choices that perhaps were not part of the plan, perhaps were off the path, and that those played out, and maybe you'll get to see them in your life review when you're back in the non-physical?
Oh, wow. Honestly, I don't know. There's so many things that we don't have the answer to, and it's I'm curious about those things. And as you begin to dive deeper into who you are and who God is, it even becomes more of a mystery, I think. and sometimes you can drive yourself crazy trying to figure it all out. And I don't think that we will in this timeline. And I do think, and what I've done in those circumstances is I put it in this box, and I think, and this is something that I get to ask God someday, and I can't wait to do that. So, you do wonder when you look at your life, is there where I came to this crossroads and I made this decision?
Yeah. Do you
What would have
ask
happened if
God
I hadn't?
things?
Pardon me?
Do you ask God things now, or are you holding them all till later?
No, I definitely ask God things now. No question. I mean, it was like when I was feeling for a moment just all of those doubts of, is anything that I have believed real? And God, you've got to show me something so that I believe you're there, that I believe that there is this ongoing life. And He showed that. So those things that are important to me, and God isn't afraid of our questions or our anger, or I mean, He loves us so much. I think we can bring Him anything to ask. So how about
Yeah.
you? Have you asked Him that question?
Oh, I ask him questions every day. I keep a
Yeah.
journal and I write down what messages I get from him. So,
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
I keep a journal too, and I think that's really important. Um, I'm also keeping a journal right now. This is relatively new this year, where I'm expectantly awaiting the miracles, because, like I said, I think we need to be opening our eyes to the miracles that are happening around us. We miss it so much. And so just writing those down, being aware of them and going, oh, wow, this amazing thing just happened. It just came to me as this gift. And that it was something that I had prayed for, and I hadn't acknowledged till I really began to think about, well, maybe this has already shown up, and it has. And so just acknowledging those moments and writing them down. And the more you see them, the more they come. You draw those to you, as you know, which is so beautiful. We just need to live in more of that space. When in our impact group, as we come together as colleagues in this environment, we really want to support each other. We have the core values of faith, family, and impact. Those are all really important to us. And when you create deep connections with other people that have similar values, they are constantly bringing these messages to you too. I mean, I've had someone in the group who came to me and just said, I was praying about this and I was given this for you. And it's a beautiful thing when you get together in community with others that have like values, that they know they're here for a purpose. They know that they're here to create an impact, and that impact is so much bigger than we can possibly imagine, if we just need to open ourselves to it and surround ourselves with other people who believe that same thing too, because it just takes us higher, right? And we can take them higher.
Yeah. Yeah. The impact is huge. It ripples across universes, it ripples across timelines. And we'll only really understand the true depth and breadth of it when we have our life review, when we're back back home in the non-physical.
That's right. That's right, for sure.
Yeah. Amazing. So thank you so much for sharing with such candor and vulnerability and authenticity and and wisdom. Thank you for your two books. I bet there's another one in there from you coming in the
There
future.
is.
Yeah, and thank you for being a light in the world, having a purpose that you take action on, and don't let it kind of sit in the back seat, but you have it driving the bus. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you, Stephan. This has just been such a pleasure. And thank you for this opportunity to be with you today. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. And my hope is it can be really helpful to those listening to take back their power to step into what they're being called to with fearlessness and knowing that the path will show itself.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. And so if our listener wants to read either or both of your books, they can get those on Amazon. And where do they find you online? Where do they connect with you, perhaps join your mastermind? And I don't know if you offer coaching or anything like that as well, but how do they work with you?
Yes, I do. So we have our faith-based entrepreneur group, and I also do, and Graham as well. We do private coaching of executives and CEOs, business owners, and you can reach out to us at legacy-leader.com and find out more. And please reach out to me. I'm on social media at Janelle Bruland. Would love to connect and do whatever I can to bring value.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Janelle. And thank you, listener. Thank you for being a light in the world as well. And go out there, make it a great week, make it a great life, and put your light out into the world. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off. If you want to hear more conversations like this on transformation and healing, then I recommend episode 276 with Susie Batiste, episode 473 with Mike Zeller, and episode 485 with Eileen Smith. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the heroes mentioned in this interview with Janelle Bruland at getyourselfoptimized.com/543. If you enjoyed the conversation, I encourage you to share this episode, and more importantly, the entire show, Get Yourself Optimized, with a friend. Change your life and help me spread the light. Thank you.